start classes at 7:15 in the morning. Sometimes we had classes in the afternoon after lunch. That was the hardest sledding, hardest I ever. I kind of feel like I'm in an afternoon class at Gateway, and the attention's gone. But I am delighted to be here. Like all the rest of the speakers, I'll give the disclaimer. I don't know how I got here, but I'm here. I have a young team that works with me, Pentecostal Resources Group. They all go out and preach youth conferences and family stuff. I said, I'm going to go talk to the seniors. You guys get the youth convention. I'll take the seniors. I enjoy talking to people who know something. I do want to just take a brief moment for a commercial if I can. One of the hats I get to wear is to be the director of the Center for the Study of Oneness Pentecostalism, which is our museum and archive, the official archive of the United Pentecostal Church, and a museum that tells the story of who we are as a church and how we got where we are. Since I have been here, of course, Brother Martin was here. And he's the chief bird dog. He's always finding artifacts, and so I've got a carload of stuff to take back that Brother Martin has picked up, and then Brother McClintock brought a couple of artifacts from his father. There's a 1945 course that Brother Rohn, R-O-H-N, however you said that, taught in the Bible college somewhere in Twin Falls, Idaho. We still sell that. It's revised a little bit. And one of the mysteries, I'm a male. Hope that's evident. And I think that means I'm competitive. So I don't know how you go through life without keeping score. So one of the ways I keep score is I check sales reports every chance I get, and then I'm curious, what are we selling? And that piece from history, this year has sold 60 of them. It used to be part of required reading, and as the person in charge of the publishing house, when we switched to Ministry Central and we pulled that off the required reading, I said, we're going to be stuck with a whole lot of copies of those. Truth of the matter is we're back reprinting them because somehow they're incredibly important. And that may be a good segue into what I'm doing today. I was talking about, before I make that segue, I guess my commercial is, I know you know somebody or you have something in your attic that your kids are going to throw away because they don't value. Please give us an opportunity to save it for Center for the Study of Oneness Pentecostalism. You reach out to me or reach out to Brother Martin, or we have a full-time person in the archive who is dedicated to preserving our past and telling our story. And then just one other piece that has to do with CSOP. We've been contacted by Lilly Foundation. That's the family of the Eli Lilly pharmaceutical company, who have more money than they know what to do with. And there is a storytelling initiative where we collect stories and testimonies. And so I wrote a grant called This Is My Story, reimagining testimony in the 21st century. And I think, and if I'm reading all the signs right, I think we're 75% certain that we're going to get $5 million to collect stories. A consultant reached out to us from there, and I'm going to talk to them next Thursday. And so I may come back to Stages next year and set a booth up and hear your stories. So I want to collect the stories of what God has done. Stories are the way in which truth is communicated. Most of the Bible is narrative in form. About 60% of the Bible is narrative. And evidently God thinks you can put truth out by telling stories. And so we want to tell stories. Well, Brother Kuhn asked me, and I am delighted to speak to you and give honor to my good friend, Brother Kuhn. He asked me the subject he assigned me was, in life's marathon, this is the kick. And I think probably you can tell by looking at me, it's been a long time since I ran a marathon. In fact, a long time is never. Uh, I have dreams and aspirations. Never in my dreams and aspirations do I want to run a marathon. I don't even think a half marathon is exciting. I wonder, do I really want to run to the kitchen to get another meal? If I got to move fast, I'll just wander out there. So I can get my head around what that means, but I'm going to change the sport for my opening remarks today and talk about something I do know a little bit about, playing hockey. It was tragic just a few weeks ago when the imposters won the game, the gold medal against the greatest hockey power in the world. But we will recover, and there's another 4 years coming, and a miracle should show up every 50 years. And I digress. Let me get back to where I was going with this. I started playing hockey. I'm from New Brunswick. My dad flooded a rink in our yard. I played hockey I can't remember when I wasn't playing hockey. As a child, that's where I learned to play hockey, and then went to the hockey rink, played on teams. So I've kind of followed the sport. It goes from pond hockey. In fact, one of the amazing things in life right now is there's a little village in the northern part of New Brunswick called Plaster Rock. When I was a kid, there was a church convention there, the Plaster Rock Convention. We went a few times as a child. Whomever the pastor, I think it was Brother Rolston in those days, he preached a double covering, so we always knew the Plaster Rock people because the women all wore hats. Somehow that little town has the world's largest pond hockey tournament. They put about 20 rinks out on the river, or I think it's the lake there, and people come from all over the world to play three-man pond hockey about this time of the year. So it's a big deal in Canada. It can be July 1st, and just by the way, we have July 4th in Canada. It comes after the 3rd and before the 5th. Because I'm often asked, do you guys have July 4th in Canada? We do. July 1st is really the more important day in Canada. That's Canada Day. But it can be Canada Day in the heat of the summer that kind of lasts about 3 weeks in Canada. And they're still talking about hockey. Because no matter else what they're doing, hockey is just part of who they are. When you're playing organized hockey, for those of you who aren't familiar with the game, it's broken into 3 periods, 3 20-minute periods. When stopwatch, so when there's a face-off, the clock's not running. But when you get to the 19th minute of that first period, you'll hear over the PA system the announcement, there's 1 minute left to play. And I was thinking about why do they do that? Why do they tell people there's 1 minute left to play? Are the fans just bored out of their seats, so they just want to go? Does that mean I need to get in line for the concession stand? I don't think that's what it means. I think that what it means is 2 things can happen in the last minute of a hockey period. One thing that can happen is you can let up just a little bit. I just got another minute. I'm not going to give it my all. I'm not going to skate as hard as I need to skate. I'm going to just coast a little bit because I'm tired and we're almost done. And so in one sense, that is a call to say, you just got another minute to hold on. Give it your best because you got 1 minute left. And if you're on the other side of the score, if you're the losing team and not the winning team, you know that if you can score a goal, you can kind of even up the game. And there's something incredibly disheartening about being scored on in the last minute of the game. So you save, in some ways, you save the best hockey for the last minute of the period. You do that in period 1, you do that in period 2, And then when you get to period 3, everything's on the line in period 3. Um, there's not another chance to catch up. You're either going to win the game or lose the game. So if you're losing the game, maybe 2.5 minutes left in the game, you'll see that goaltender. Again, for those who are uninitiated in hockey, there are 5 people skating and 1 goaltender. So 5 aside plus the goaltender. You'll see that goaltender make a beeline for the bench, and a player will jump over the boards, and they're going to play without a goalie. They're taking a risk. They're going to put maximum pressure on. They know if they get the puck to the other end, there's a pretty good chance they're going to get scored on. But they are willing to take that chance because they know if they've got an extra attacker, they probably can score, and they're running out of time. They don't have much time left. They've got to finish well. And I kind of a long-suffering Blues fan, although we did win the cup a couple of years ago, but just a while ago, actually last year's playoffs, they're playing Winnipeg. And I think maybe 4 or 5 seconds left in the game, and they let Winnipeg tie them, and Winnipeg won in the overtime. No. And you're almost done with hockey when there's only 4 or 5 seconds left. You just want to say, if you could have just hung on for another minute or two, a second or two, life would have been different. We're at the place in life where the end is closer than the beginning. There's more yesterdays behind us than there are tomorrows in front of us. And I want to finish well. I want to go out right. I want to do what I can with the time that remains. And I'm in that season right now where I'm on the bubble of retirement in the next couple of years. I'm not going to work for a paycheck anymore. And I'm processing that. What comes after? What do I do with my life? How do I make an impact? Because I've been blessed, be involved, doing some wonderful things. Pastored a church for 13 years, worked at a Bible college for 13 years, and for the last 19 years, led a team at headquarters in publishing and resource development. I frequently, when I turn down the road to go into headquarters, I ask myself the question, just kind of ponder the wonder of how in the world do I get to do what I get to do and they pay me to do it. I mean, I got this great team that I've been able to put together who, whatever, I get to say, let's do it. And they say, we'll make it happen. And I'm trying to figure out what happens after I can't do that anymore. I know this much. I want to finish well. I want to make sure that my last days are better than my first days. I've kind of got an image, and I'll talk about it at the very end, what I'd like to do to close out this life and enter into the next. Let me switch just a little bit. At Sanctuary right now where we attend in St. Louis, Bill Bland has been pushing us to get the word out of the church, get it particularly into our homes. He's trying to encourage everybody to do personal Bible studies at home and families to do Bible studies together, devotional time in the home, recognizing that the home really is the first place of discipleship, and the church comes alongside to help the home. We shouldn't outsource the teaching of our children to the church. The church should supplement what we're doing. So we're in that process, and they asked me to teach an elective class on helping people study the Bible. So I've done some work with Acts, and so I'm kind of working my way through Acts, kind of show them particularly how narrative portions of the Scripture can teach theology. And so I'm in that whole process last week, and I'm talking to them about the speeches in the book of Acts. So one of the ways you know how things are important in Acts is just by these speeches. There are, depending on how you count speeches, if you take everything that would be in quotation marks, In English today, there are about 36 or 37 speeches in Acts. Other people would say there's about 24 speeches in Acts. And most of them are done by either Peter or Paul. Peter's speeches are almost always evangelistic. I mean, you might have heard of one on the day of Pentecost. Maybe in a sermon or two, Pastor might have mentioned that. And Paul's speeches are almost all apologetic in nature. He's defending the faith. The longest speech in Acts is Stephen. He's talking to the people who were throwing rocks at him, preaching through a little bit of opposition. But the only one in the book of Acts that's anything like what we get on Sunday morning, if it's not an evangelistic service, is Paul's speech, his farewell speech to the Ephesian elders in Acts chapter 20. And I want to take just a little time to talk about Paul's speech to the Ephesian elders. He has been in Ephesus longer than he was anywhere that I'm aware of. He's there about 3 years. And he lived amongst them. He started a school there called the School of Tyrannus. And he feels like it's time to move on. And he calls the elders together to preach a little bit to them about what the future holds. Because there's this sense, Paul knows it and some other people know it, that the future is not bright for Paul. He is compelled, he says, in the spirit to go to Jerusalem. But the prophets in his life are saying, if you go to Jerusalem, they're going to bind you. And it's one of the times where we judge prophecy. I'm not suggesting that the prophets were wrong. In fact, they were right. But Paul had heard from the Lord, so he said, I'm going to Jerusalem. So that's the setting here in Acts chapter 20. And he's kind of wants to say a few things to them before he rides off into the sunset. He starts that speech by taking some time to remember what God has done amongst them, about how God had moved with them, what they learned together, and how he taught them, and how he poured into them. And there is a place in our lives, and particularly we who are elders, to tell the stories of what God has done earlier in our life. There is a place to honor the past. There is, and maybe people humor me, but they do listen when I tell stories about what God has done and where God has been and how God has moved in our lives and how we saw the hand of God. And I don't know what your experiences have been with God, but more often I can see God in my life in hindsight. He's clearer in the rearview mirror than he is looking ahead. So when I look back about what God has done and how he worked things together, situations that I was involved in, decisions that I had to make, that I didn't really know how to make those decisions, but I prayed and God gave some guidance. And I wasn't sure that was the right guidance at the moment that I gave it, but looking over my shoulder, he was there. He was steering the ship. He was saying, this is where you should go. And so part of the role that we play in life right now is the keeper of the stories. You've got this. I remember being a young preacher, and what I felt, there was a lot missing from my repertoire, but what I really felt was missing was I don't have these stories. I don't have those James Kilgore stories. I could tell J.T. Pugh stories. I can collect stories, but I just didn't have any. You've got them now. Whatever else life has brought you, it has brought you a lot of experiences, and from those experiences, their stories. And so when Paul is saying, I'm going to leave here in a little bit, but let's stop for a moment and honor where we've been. I want you to remember the time that we've spent and what I said to you. And then he said, I got to go, because it's in verse 24. He said, I got to finish well. I need to finish well. It would be easy for me to say, I hear what the prophets are saying, but I can't. The Spirit is telling me. And I follow the Spirit all of my life. I can't quit following the Spirit now when it seems like it's uncomfortable. The future is not what the past was. And you know the story because you read the rest of the book of Acts. He does go to Jerusalem. He is imprisoned. He ultimately makes his way from there, not because he chooses to do it, but he makes his way from there all the way to Rome. and we're pretty certain that he dies in Rome. He does tell one of his young followers when he writes a letter to Timothy, I fought a good fight. I finished the course. I finished well, Timothy. I'm looking at death, and I want to tell you I've finished the course. I've finished well. I want to finish well. I want to do something. Whatever the future holds, and I can play golf once in a while. I'm not sure I want to get up every day and play golf. That'd be kind of like a job. And if you ever saw me play golf, you'd know how bad a job that is. Yeah, I don't really want to spend all my time in the woods chasing balls. I do want to finish well. I want to be that voice in someone's life, Brother Graves. I want to be that elder that says, this is the way you should go. This is what I think you should do. I want to live a life so that they will look to me to ask me the questions. Sometimes, as elders, we don't get asked because we don't have anything constructive to offer. Sometimes the paths get worn deep. I won't tell you who this guy. I'm gonna do Brother Graves' deal. I'm not telling the person's name, but if I said his name, isn't that how we do it? But if I said his name, you'd all know him. This particular person did not like environmentalists. He did not, and it was as predictable as the clock. If you say something about environmentalists, he'd say, "I tell you what you need to do with those environmentalists. You need to put them all in a garbage scow, put them in the middle of the ocean, and sink them all." And it got to be funny because I would be with him, and I'd say, "Watch this," and I'd say it, and he'd bite every time. Sometimes the reason they're not asking us for advice is because they know what they're going to get. I want to be constructive. I want to finish well. I want to finish my portion here with just two stories, and I'll be done. Opened up a Christianity Today probably a year ago, inside cover. Christianity Today comes, they buy it for me at headquarters, but it costs me money because every issue there's a book or two I need to buy. And so I opened up the cover of the magazine, and inside the cover was this incredibly compelling copy. The tag said, "The story of the greatest missionary you've never heard of." And then somewhere down the bottom it said, "This woman has been responsible for more people coming to Christ than Billy Graham." I'm going like, who is she? So I bought the book. The advertising worked. Her name is Catherine Barnwell, and she's a Bible translator. She was a Bible translator. She's a young single woman. She went to Nigeria, and she revolutionized Bible translations. She was responsible for the Bible being translated in so many languages and changing the way in which Bibles are translated from. Much of the Christian movement is from the West to the rest, but she involved native speakers in the process of Bible translation. She did it for years. She became, she worked for Wycliffe and some of the other Bible translators. She moved up the ranks to become lead of all of that around the world. But she loved Nigeria and the many, many languages of Nigeria, and would go back to Nigeria so often to be with the people that she first worked amongst. And then, age caught up with her, and she retired back to England. And in her words, she said, "I'm thankful that it was my knees that gave out rather than my mind. She said, I can't travel anymore, but people made their way to Catherine's house. And she talked Bible translations. And she wanted to know, what are you doing and how are you doing it? Up until, she just died last year at 87 years old. But people were still beating a path to her door because she cared, she was committed, she knew that she didn't have to be the big person in the show, and everybody called her Mama Katie. In the world, I know nothing about Bible translation. The person who wrote her biography, Jordan Monson, said he talked about the first time he went to a meeting of Wycliffe Bible translators, and this legend came in the room, and he didn't. It was kind of, if you're a basketball player, it'd be like Michael Jordan walking in the room, or a hockey player, it's like Wayne Gretzky. There's this Katie Barnwell. No one outside the guild knew her name, but she kept pouring in and pouring in and pouring in. The next story is a little more personal because I know this person personally. But Dan Scott, met him years ago when I was in British Columbia and he was in California. And we moved, both of us ended up in St. Louis, and he is just such a unique person. And when he was retiring, had retired from regional director. He was a regional director for South America. He invited me and Brother Jim Littles to go with him to Ecuador. One last trip. He said, I got some money left in my account. Why don't you come with me? Let's go to Ecuador. He loved Ecuador. Let me tell you the story of Dan Scott. He went there as a young man with his family, and he had incredible revival. But he got sick. And he actually was scheduled to, he came home from the mission field to die. He just knew that he was incredibly sick and no one could figure out what was wrong with him. And so, he went back to West Virginia and just was kind of waiting to die. During that sickness, they appointed a new missionary to go to Ecuador. Somewhere in the whole process of that waiting to die, someone suggested there's another doctor you should see, and this doctor had been in countries around the equator and said, I think maybe what you have is a parasite. And sure enough, that's what it was. He didn't have a parasite, he had parasites. And they were able to cleanse his body from those parasites, and he got his health back. What he really wanted to do was go back to Ecuador. That's where his heart was. That was his greatest success. Those were the people he deeply, deeply loved. But there was a missionary there. And there was only room for one missionary. And so what he did, instead of going to Ecuador, started a church there in Charleston, West Virginia, and then they called on him to start Spanish ministry. And so he went across the United States, spent some time in Florida, and spent some time in California. And much of what we have, saw Brother Martinez around here, much of what we have right here in Spanish ministries is a result of Dan Scott. He traveled and traveled and traveled. But then he got an opportunity to get back to foreign missions. This time it was in RD, and it was South America, the place he loved so deeply. And so when we went with him, he was showing us the places in Quito. But really, most of the trip we spent in the lobby of the hotel, and he cried. He was mourning the end of a time in his life. Chapter was closing. Wasn't sure what the new chapter was going to bring. He was going to work for Brother Howell. But this was his favorite chapter. And he'd tell stories and he'd cry. I found caprese salads there, and I ate a lot of caprese salads while he cried and told stories. Said, I got one more person you need to meet before we leave. He was old enough to retire. He did come back, work for Brother Howell for a while, and then he retired from headquarters. But he didn't retire. He goes to the church that I attend, and on Sunday morning, he's going to be there for Sunday school, he's going to be there for the preacher, and I know exactly where he sits, so when the altar call comes, he's going to be working that altar. He will be 94 before long. He works that altar. He prays for anything that moves at the altar. He does. He's always had a burden for Spanish people. And he's tried before in Sanctuary to get a Spanish church going and wasn't successful, but a young guy started attending Urson University that the Scott saw some potential, and he said, let's start a Spanish church. A couple weeks ago, they had 90 in Spanish church. In a Spanish church. So he's Sunday school, Sunday morning. He's involved Sunday morning worship. He's praying at the altars. There's Spanish church Sunday afternoon, so Sunday afternoon he's doing some preaching often, and there's no quit in him. 4 or 5 years ago, he'd be teaching the adult Sunday school class at the sanctuary, and I think we found in hindsight that he was struggling, just maybe too much information with a urinary tract infection, and that can affect your mental ability. So he often comes over to talk to me on Sunday morning before service. He said, I got a message this morning. I know I'm going to do well, because he'd struggled the last time. I know I'm going to do well. And he got up there, and he lost his place, and he couldn't speak. I had to come up and, we're good friends, so I rescued him. I went up and helped him land the plane, and he was so distraught. I don't think I can do this anymore. But you know what? Thank God in antibiotics. Whatever that was, it went away. So he's pushing 94. On Tuesday night, he's teaching a Bible study. He's got 60 people in the Bible study. Wednesday night, he'll be at church, the sanctuary. Thursday night, that's midweek for the Spanish church. That's where he'll be. I want to be Dan Scott. I want to finish well. He'll come over and tell me, I know I haven't done much. So one of the things I need to accomplish. He'll be up at 5 praying. Somewhere in the midst of all that, he's growing grapes and making jam. If there's a work day, he'll be there. He doesn't have to be. Just want to finish well. Those of you that have pastored know what it's like to visit people who are elderly. And sometimes that's a chore. Because part of the visit is you get all the list of the aches and pains, and sometimes they'll replay some hurt they got 40 years ago that they never let go of. But every once in a while, I wish it were more. I met with a guy, somebody called me early this week and said, can we have breakfast? And I got something I need to run by you. So we went to breakfast. You never know what those questions are. Those are always, open. But the question was an incredible question. Is there a reasonable expectation that we should continue to grow spiritually? Yeah. There's a reasonable expectation that we should grow spiritually. And his frustration was he's dealing with people who've stopped. All they've gotten is older. They've gotten no wiser. They've gotten no more spiritual. They've stopped. And sometimes, I'm just going to meddle for just a moment, sometimes we put so much focus on salvation that we don't put the focus on maturity. We're so concerned that they speak in tongues so they can be saved that we don't really ask the question, what is the purpose for the Spirit in my life anyway? It's not a ticket to heaven. It's not my punch card to heaven. It's so that I will grow in grace. It'll lead me and guide me into all truth. And part of that is not just truth of the Bible. It's truth about my life and how I can grow more spiritually. Let me go back to the people in the church that you visit sometimes. And you go as a busy pastor to visit that sister that's been shut in. And when you're done visiting, you have been ministered to. You went to minister, but they ministered to you. I just want to be that person. I want to finish well.